You know, if Trump were to become president, which I can't imagine is going to happen since he's alienated so many minorities and women and everything else, but let's just say that something happens where he is, because Hillary is not the stronger candidate in terms of the polls to beat him because of so many independents and then the Green Party and everybody else that probably will not, that are Democrats only because of Bernie Sanders. So if he doesn't get the nomination, there's a very good chance that a lot of people won't vote. They won't vote for Trump, but they were never in the Democratic Party to begin with. So they probably, unless she changes her position on fracking or Wall Street or healthcare or any of the things that they feel strongly about, they're not going to vote for her. So say that happens, and there's a lot of Republicans that'll vote for Hillary. She's gone now to them for money. And a lot of Jeb Bush's people, because she is a very good Republican candidate, so that might help. But let's say that doesn't help, and Trump gets in. There's already such an activated movement right now for civil liberties, for the environment, for everything else. He's not an interventionist. I think part of what will happen, it depends on who his cabinet would be. And I don't think we have any idea, and no one has any idea what his foreign policy is. But in terms of women, I think that there's been such an activation of minorities because of the movement of Bernie Sanders. And there's a lot of people that have been brought into the political process that had not been engaged before, especially millions of millennials. And I don't think they're going to let much happen. I mean, there's going to be such a backlash. And the important thing, as Bernie Sanders says, is that the people take part in the midterm elections, which have been ignored all the time. But they won't be any longer. So that's what has to change, is the status quo, and that is the House and the Senate. And those people are already being targeted by the Sanders groups to get more progressive people, and most of them are women. So if that happens, which is very possible, I think that it won't really matter much. I mean, what he thinks, because nothing will be able to happen. I mean, the thing that is interesting about Trump is that the main things that he talks about are absolutely impossible. So they're not that threatening. I mean, he's obviously not going to build a wall. He's not going to be able to export all the Muslims in the United States. I mean, like, all of those things are impossible to do. So they're not what's threatening. What he did that was terrible is that he legitimized racism and homophobia and everything else, that in order to get that very discontented base that wants something other than something authentic, and he seemed authentic. But what he did in the process was say it was okay to be violent. That's why he has the KKK as one of his representatives, and that's been really terrible. Besides the fact that America looks ridiculous, that we have gotten that far. But the other thing that's really been fabulous is that it has exposed how lame the media is, how irresponsible. I mean, they weren't even covering Bernie Sanders until he won Iowa. That's why the millennials knew so much, because they were online. The mainstream media never paid any attention to him. And they're still, he just won 3 more states, and they're still not in any way, thousands and thousands of people show up at his rallies and they don't cover them.
The narrative now is that Hillary will be the nominee. That's basically the...
It's been the narrative all along. Yeah. It's nothing new. But
you don't agree with that narrative?
I don't agree with that narrative. I think a lot can happen, besides the fact that she could be indicted at any moment, which could also, that's why they're bringing out Biden all of a sudden. She stands a very good chance. All those things that are leaking out now are terrible. So I don't know what's going to happen with the indictment. They're trying to push it off. The date is now like the day after the convention. But some of the superdelegates are changing. I mean, you can't ignore what's happened with him, with the thousands and thousands of people. There's also an enormous amount of voter fraud that has been exposed. In New York, for instance, 170,000 people were removed from the voting register, most of them from Harlem and Brooklyn. And they knew that before the day before. And then people showed up. Zoe Kravitz is one of them. She showed up to vote, and she was listed as a Republican. People went, and so they're angry. So all of these various, and the DNC hasn't even said a thing. So people are starting, at least people now are awake, and they're saying, wait a minute, you know, there was a convention in Nevada the other day where people weren't allowed in with credentials, they were kept out. I went to a number of caucuses that were clearly, things were wrong. I guess we have to have like Cuba come and watch our voting in the United States. But, so that's a really good thing that these things have been exposed. I don't know if they'll be fixed, but they're going to be addressed because now people are very angry. You know, if you work really hard and you want to vote and you go and you can't vote, or there's one university where there's 200,000 kids and there are 2 machines.